Clowney trying to go right back at KJ. Wembanyama right there. And then again, came over late. Martin misses the three. Champagnie secures it. 2 for 1 if the Spurs want it. Wembanyama wants it. From the logo.
What do you call a man who stands 7 feet 4 inches tall, moves like a point guard, shoots like a sniper, blocks shots that had no business being blocked, and does all of it with the cold, unbothered confidence of someone who already knows how the story ends? What do you call a player who at 22 years old has already made the greatest defenders in the world look ordinary, made 2-time MVPs question everything they thought they knew about their own game, and made Hall of Fame coaches run completely out of answers before the first quarter is even over? What do you call something the sport of basketball has genuinely never seen before, not in 80 years of history, not through Wilt, not through Kareem, not through Shaq, not through any of the giants and legends and generational talents the game has produced across an entire century of trying? You call him Victor Wembanyama. And even that still doesn't quite cover it. And if you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now because what we are about to break down is the kind of story that only comes along once in a generation. Actually, scratch that. This story has never come along before. Not once. Not ever. So stay locked in because you do not want to miss a single word of this. Now. Back to the monster. The word that keeps coming back, from players.
I mean, Wemby is the best thing that happened to the NBA since LeBron James in 2003.
Not as an insult. Not as lazy hyperbole. As the single most accurate description available to the human vocabulary when trying to explain something that simply does not fit inside any existing category the sport has ever created. Adrian Wojnarowski, the most connected reporter in the history of basketball, a man who does not throw around superlatives carelessly or cheaply, looked the entire world in the eye and said Victor Wembanyama is the greatest prospect of all time. Greater than Wilt Chamberlain. Greater than LeBron James. Greater than every player who ever walked through the doors of this league carrying the crushing weight of impossible expectations on their shoulders. And then Wembanyama walked in and exceeded every single one of them. Think about what this creature actually looks like on a basketball court. 7 feet 4 inches of pure terrifying length with a wingspan that stretches to 8 feet across. 240 pounds of lean, mobile, explosive muscle that moves with a grace and a fluidity that has absolutely no business existing inside a body that size. He runs the floor like a small forward, handles the ball like a guard, posts up like a power forward, rises off the dribble from the perimeter like a shooting guard, and anchors a defensive system like no center in the history of the game has ever done before. Every single time a coach or a scout tries to find the category to put him in, he does something in the very next possession that obliterates the category entirely. He is not a center who can step outside. He is not a stretch big who can defend. He is not a point forward with size. He is something the game's entire vocabulary was never built to describe, a basketball monster assembled from the very best parts of every position that has ever existed, fused together inside a frame that has no right to move the way it moves, and fueled by a competitive fire that burns so ferociously it reduced him to tears on an enemy floor in the single biggest moment of his young life. The beast is 22 years old. And he is just getting started. In his third NBA season, Wembanyama averaged 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game during the regular season, becoming the first player in NBA history to average those 3 numbers simultaneously. In the playoffs he elevated even further, 23 points, 11 rebounds, 3.5 blocks per night, leading the entire postseason in both total rebounds and total blocks. Through just his first 16 playoff games he accumulated 372 points, 176 rebounds, and 59 blocks. Only 2 other players in the entire history of the NBA reached numbers like that through the same window of playoff games. David Robinson. Hakeem Olajuwon. 2 of the greatest big men who ever breathed. And a 22-year-old just walked up and stood beside them like he belonged there, because he does. But here is what no box score can ever tell you. Here is what no stat line can capture no matter how many columns you add to it. Victor Wembanyama does not just play basketball. He warps it. He bends the geometry of the entire game, pulling defenses toward him like a black hole on one end of the floor, and pushing offenses away from the paint like a gravitational force field on the other. Role players around him suddenly look like all-stars. Elite scorers across from him suddenly look confused and ordinary. The sport is still in the very early stages of figuring out what to do about him. Nobody had a real answer in year 1. Nobody found one in year 2. And in year 3, when the San Antonio Spurs walked into Oklahoma City on a Wednesday night for Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals and dismantled the reigning champions in their own building, beating them 8 times in 12 meetings across a full season of the Thunder trying everything they had, it became impossible for anyone to keep pretending the answer was still somewhere on the horizon. The NBA bought itself 3 years with a comfortable lie. Not yet. He doesn't have enough around him. We have time. The alien heard every single word. And then he showed up anyway, early, complete, and absolutely unstoppable. Numbers lie sometimes in basketball. Not these numbers. 25 points. 11 rebounds. 3 blocks. Every single night. Against defenses built from the ground up with one single purpose, stopping him. No player in NBA history had ever averaged those 3 numbers simultaneously before Victor Wembanyama did it at 22 years old like it was completely routine. He shot 51% from the field. He made threes at 35%, and that number is what makes him truly unguardable. You cannot pack the paint against a 7-foot-4 man who knocks down perimeter shots. You cannot shrink the floor against someone whose territory covers every single inch of it. The rulebook that big men have played by for 5 decades simply does not apply to him. Defensively, he finished first in the entire league in total blocks. First in blocks per game. Second in defensive box plus minus. Opponents shooting against him converted at just 49%. At the rim they managed only 50% with him standing in the way, and that number came against every type of scoring the modern game produces. Drives. Floaters. Post moves. Pull-up jumpers. He erased all of it. And then came the award that no player in the history of professional basketball had ever claimed the way he claimed it. The Defensive Player of the Year. Every single voter. Every single ballot. One name written down over and over again with zero disagreement anywhere. The first unanimous Defensive Player of the Year in NBA history. Not the best among several worthy candidates. Not a close race. A unanimous declaration from every evaluator in the sport that Victor Wembanyama is the most dominant defensive force professional basketball has ever seen. That award alone would define most careers entirely. For Wembanyama it is one line on a resume still being written. In the playoffs he got better. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 3.5 blocks against defenses that had 2 full weeks to prepare specifically for him and nothing else. He led the entire postseason in total rebounds. He led the entire postseason in total blocks. Through his first 16 playoff games his accumulated totals placed him alongside only 2 players in NBA history at that same milestone. David Robinson. Hakeem Olajuwon. 2 of the greatest centers who ever lived. A 22-year-old just walked up and stood beside them like he belonged there. Because he does. The alien is not coming. He is not developing. He is not a promise or a projection or a potential. He is already here. He is already historic. And he is not even close to his ceiling yet. There is a concept that lives inside every possession Victor Wembanyama plays. Nobody had a name for it until someone in a comment section called it gravitational repulsion. And it is absolutely perfect. Here is what it means. On defense Wembanyama does not need to move his feet to destroy an offense. Teams spend the entire shot clock trying to keep the ball as far away from him as humanly possible. They swing it side to side. They drive away from him. They settle for worse shots. They panic. They take bad threes early in the clock just to avoid going anywhere near the rim while he is standing in front of it. He warps the entire offense away from the paint without even trying. That is not defense. That is dominance at a level the sport has never categorized before. And then it flips completely on the other end. On offense he becomes a black hole. Every defender on the floor gets pulled toward him. The double comes. The help slides over. 4 sets of eyes lock onto the big man simultaneously. And all of that gravity, all of that defensive attention and panic and rotation, is the exact thing that sets every single teammate free. The open shooter in the corner. The cutter going backdoor. The guard with a clear runway to the rim. They are open because the entire defense is too busy being terrified of Wembanyama to do their own jobs. He does not just make his teammates better. He hands them permission to be great. That is the gift no box score has ever captured. That is the weapon no defense has solved. That is why standing across from the San Antonio Spurs every single night feels less like a basketball game and more like a slow, inevitable suffocation. The alien does not just play the game. He owns it. Here is the most terrifying thing about the San Antonio Spurs. Victor Wembanyama is not even the whole problem. Every opponent that has faced this team made the same mistake. They looked at the 7'4" alien standing in the middle of everything and built their entire game plan around containing him. Stop Wemby. Wall him off. Limit his touches. Make someone else beat you. It sounds logical. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like the only sensible starting point. And every single team that tried it got destroyed anyway. Because while they were busy worrying about Wembanyama, 3 guards were already dismantling everything else. Stephon Castle first. 21 years old, averaging 19 points and 7 assists in the playoffs, leading the entire postseason in total assists. He took the single toughest defensive assignment in the league, guarding 2-time MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and held him to under 38% from the field across the entire series. A young floor general running an offense like a seasoned veteran on one end and locking up the best scorer on the planet on the other. That is not a role player. That is a two-way star being built in real time right in front of everyone. Then there is De'Aaron Fox. The relief valve. The man who grabs the wheel when everything starts wobbling. He leads the entire league in clutch points. When the offense stalls and the shot clock bleeds and the defense tightens, Fox takes the game personally, gets downhill, bends the defense, and either finishes or kicks it to an open shooter. Without him in the first 2 games of the OKC series, Castle coughed up 20 turnovers under the weight of carrying everything alone. Fox returned and the turnovers dropped to 12 across the next 5 games combined. That is what a true release valve does. And then there is Dylan Harper. A rookie. In Game 1 against the defending champions he posted 24 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, and 7 steals. Since steals became an official stat in the 1970s, only one other rookie had ever produced a 20-10-5-5 playoff line. His name is Magic Johnson. Harper is the 3rd guard on this team. Add Champagny knocking down 40% from 3. Add Vassell locking up elite wings every single night. Add Keldon Johnson bringing pure muscle and fire off the bench. There is no weak link. There is no safe assignment. There is nowhere to hide. The alien built a machine around himself. And every single part of it is designed to make you pay for whatever decision you make. Every generation gets one moment. One singular, undeniable, stop everything you are doing moment where the sport looks up from everything it thought it knew and recognizes that something completely new has taken over. This is that moment. Victor Wembanyama is 22 years old. He is the unanimous Defensive Player of the Year. He is the first player in NBA history to average 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks simultaneously. He led the entire playoffs in total rebounds and total blocks. He stands alongside David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon in playoff history through just 16 games. He took a franchise that won 22 games 2 years ago straight to the NBA Finals ahead of every timeline every expert ever projected. He beat the two-time MVP. He beat the reigning champions. He did it on their floor in Game 7 without even needing to go fully nuclear. And he is still getting better. Think about what that means. Everything described above, every record, every award, every historic comparison, every demolished opponent, represents Victor Wembanyama before he has reached his prime. The most dominant defensive player the sport has ever unanimously agreed upon. The most physically terrifying presence on any floor he walks onto. The player who makes two-time MVPs inefficient, makes Hall of Fame coaches desperate, and makes every intelligent defensive scheme in basketball look completely ordinary. That is the incomplete version. That is the foundation. The Knicks are standing across from him in the NBA Finals with an 11-game winning streak and the greatest point differential in modern playoff history. They are not soft. They are not here by accident. Jalen Brunson is ice-cold in clutch moments. OG Anunoby is a defensive weapon. Karl Anthony Towns has been reborn. This is a real finals opponent and they deserve every ounce of respect they have earned. But they have never faced anything like this. Nobody has. When Wembanyama steps onto the Madison Square Garden floor, the building will feel it before the ball is even tipped. The crowd will feel it. The Knicks will feel it. The entire basketball world watching from everywhere will feel it. Because there is something undeniable that happens when a generational force meets its biggest stage, something electric and historic and impossible to look away from. The alien came early. He came complete. He brought a machine with him. He broke records that stood for decades. He made history that will be studied for generations. The crown was always going to be his. It was only ever a question of when. The when is now. If this story gave you chills, good. It should. Hit that subscribe button and never miss another breakdown like this one. The alien has landed. And we will be here for every single step of what comes next.